At first, Santa Claus was a saint. In the Middle Ages, parents told children scary stories about how Santa could boil them in a pot. Later, Santa became part of the American Civil War, and today many people believe that Santa was invented by Coca-Cola. So, let's talk about where Santa Claus came from, why he needed scare helpers, and how he became the character we know today. Santa Claus did not appear at once. His image was formed from many layers of different cultures, times, and traditions, like a puzzle that was put together over several centuries. The main prototype of Santa Claus is Saint Nicholas, a real Christian saint who lived in the 1st century AD. He was a bishop and dedicated his life to Christianity. The most famous legend about Saint Nicholas tells the story of three sisters whose father was in a very difficult situation. He was so poor that he could not give his daughters a dowry. According to the legend, he decided to sell one of them to a brothel, so the other two could get married. When Saint Nicholas learned about this, he secretly threw a bag of gold into the family's house, through the chimney at night. In this way, he saved the girl from a tragic fate. Stories like this created important traits of the future Santa Claus. It's a secret night visit and giving gifts without being seen. In the Middle Ages, this became a tradition. On the night of December 5 to 6, parents gave gifts to children in honor of St. Nicholas's Day. However, in the 16th century, during the Reformation of Martin Luther, the worship of saints was no longer supported. Martin Luther believed that Christian faith should focus only on Jesus Christ. The tradition of giving gifts remained, but it was moved to the night of December 24 to 25 to connect it with the birth of Christ. Another prototype of Santa Claus was Father Christmas, a character from English folklore. He was seen as the spirit of Christmas joy, bringing happiness, good food, and wine. At first, Father Christmas had nothing to do with children or gifts. He reminded adults that it was time to celebrate, to eat, drink, and enjoy life with a big feast. But over time, the church began to criticize exclusive feasting, and the image of Father Christmas slowly changed into a cheerful old man, just a symbol of celebration. Gradually, the religious image of the kind and generous Saint Nicholas merged with the fairy tale image of English Father Christmas. In different countries, local folklore elements were added to this image. For example, in Northern Europe, it mixed with pagan beliefs connected to the god Odin. In Scandinavian mythology, Odin was shown as a bearded old man who traveled through the sky during the winter festival of Yule. People believed he watched humans and rewarded the worthy. In the Netherlands, Saint Nicholas became known as Sinterklaas. He was a character of an annual holiday when children received gifts. Sinterklaas arrived on a horse, and children left their shoes with him to put presents inside. It was from the Dutch name Sinterklaas that the name Santa Claus appeared in English. So, this is how by the 7th century the image of Santa Claus had formed. A mix of legends about Saint Nicholas, English Father Christmas, and European folklore. Today, we see Santa as a kind and harmless character. Gifts, smiles, no danger at all. But it wasn't always like this. For a long time, in European traditions, Santa had dark and scary companions. Unlike Santa himself, their role was not to give gifts, but to punish naughty children and remind them of bad behavior. In the Netherlands, Sinterklaas is accompanied by Zwarte Piet. Sometimes he is described as a former sinner or a demon who serves Saint Nicholas. Zwarte Piet carries a book with children's good and bad actions. If he meets a child who behaved badly, he may beat the child with a whip instead of giving a gift. He also carries a bag, not for presents, but for bad children, whom he takes away for punishment. In Germany, Saint Nicholas was accompanied by Nechtruprecht, whose name means servant. According to legends, Saint Nicholas raised him from childhood. Ruprecht wears a dark robe with a pointed hood, limbs, and sometimes wears bells, to warn people of his arrival. He asked children if they can pray. If they can, they received apples, nuts, and gingerbread as a gift. If not, he hits them with a bag of ashes. He also leaves a stick for their parents, so they can punish the child during the year. In Finland, there is a Christmas figure called Joulupukki. Today he looks like a regular Santa Claus and has no companions, but before the 19th century he was shown wearing goat skins and sometimes small horns. His name literally means Christmas goat. He did not give gifts. He kidnapped naughty children, boiled them in a pot, and used rods to punish them. There were also independent, terrifying Christmas figures. For example, Perchta is one of the scariest figures in Germanic and Slavic folklore. On the 12th night of Christmas, she walks through children's homes. Perchta is a symbol of hard work and hates lazy people. She checks how hardworking and obedient children are. Hardworking children receive a coin hidden in a bucket. But if child was lazy, Perchta cuts open their stomach, removes their insides, fills their body with straw and stones, and eats their remains. Such a lovely Christmas story. The same role in Iceland is played by the Yule cat. It's a huge black cat as big as a bull, living in the mountains. During Yule, the midwinter festival, the Yule cat walks through villages. He checks whether the children received new wool clothes for Christmas. If they did not, it means the child was lazy and disobedient all year. Such children are taken to the mountains and eaten alive. And finally, the most famous companion and opposite of Santa Claus is Krampus. He is the demonic figure from Alpine folklore, a Christmas devil and companion of Saint Nicholas. While Nicholas rewards good children, Krampus punishes the rest. He looks like a half man, half goat with horns, hooves, chains, and a long tongue. His name comes from the German word Krampen, meaning claw. He appears on the night of December 5 to 6, the day of Saint Nicholas' death. This night is called Krampusnacht. On this night, Krampus gives out money punishment to naughty children. With his long red tongue, he grabs them, beats them with rods, puts them in a sack, and carries them into the mountains. Some stories say he takes them to hell or freezes them to death. Krampus became extremely popular in Europe in the late 19th century. During this time, people began giving each other colorful greeting cards with images of Krampus. These cards often had the words "Greeting from Krampus" written on them. Today, Krampus has not lost his popularity. In Austria and Germany, people still celebrate Krampusnacht. This is a night when people wear frightening demonic masks and take part in street processions with the sound of chains and loud shooting, creating chaos, frightening people, and driving away evil spirits. In medieval Europe, fear played an important role in raising children. Winter was a real danger. Cold, hunger, and disease threatened people's lives. So, these why folklore characters connected to winter holidays were made scary on purpose. It was a way to show children how harsh the world could be. Through frightening stories, children learned how to survive and what they should fear. Santa's prototypes and his dark companions did not only reward good children, but also scared naughty ones. Fear was a tool of control that helped parents shape children's behavior. But by the 18th century, society began to change. Living conditions improved, child mortality decreased, and people became less dependent on harsh nature. Winter stopped being a danger to life, and fear was no longer necessary for survival. At the same time, ideas about raising children change. In safer and more stable conditions, scary winter figures began to seem too cruel. A key role was played by 19th century American culture. The idea of warm, family-centered Christmas became popular. Santa slowly became a kind old man who rewards, but does not punish. Fear disappeared from his role. Several key works of that period helped shape a new, exceptionally kind and festive image of Santa Claus. In 1821, a poem by the anonymous author called Old Santa Claus with Much Delight became popular in America. It told a story about Santa and mentioned elements that are typical of his modern image. The illustrations for this poem are the earliest images of Santa Claus as an independent character. In these drawings, he wears a red coat and sits in a sleigh. This is the first time Santa is shown wearing red clothes. 1 year later, literature professor Clement Clark Moore wrote a Christmas poem for his children, which made the new image of Santa even more popular. Before this poem appeared, ideas about Santa Claus were quite unclear. People knew him as a character, but there was no complete vision about him. Some stories say one thing and other legends say another. In this poem on Christmas night, Vala wakes up because of a noise outside his house. When he looks out the window, he sees Santa Claus flying through the air in a sleigh pulled by H&D. Santa lands on the roof, enters the house through the chimney with a sack of toys, and puts gifts into the children's stocking, hanging by the fireplace. Afterward, Santa leaves through the chimney and wishes everyone a Merry Christmas. In 1823, the poem was published in the newspaper Sentinel under the title A Visit from St. Nicholas, also known as The Night Before Christmas. The poem was a huge success. It was from this work that a clear image of Santa began to form. 20 years after the publication, all of America knew the story of Santa Claus, who flies in a sleigh with reindeer and jumps into chimneys on Christmas. By the second half of the 19th century, the story of Santa already existed, but his visual image was still not fully formed. This changed in 1863, when an illustration called Christmas in Camp by Thomas Nast appeared in Harper's Weekly magazine. Thomas Nast was one of the most famous cartoon artists of his time. He was a strong supporter of the Republican Party, and his cartoons were well known for their political meaning. Christmas in Camp was a political cartoon about the American Civil War, the war between the Union and Confederacy. The illustration showed Santa visiting a Union army camp to bring Christmas gifts to the soldiers. Santa Claus sitting in a sleigh was shown as a supporter of the Union. He wore a jacket with stars, like the US flag. He entertains soldiers with a jumping doll labeled Jeff. The story was a parody of Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. Santa in this cartoon became extremely popular. Until 1886, Thomas Nast published illustrations of Santa almost every year. He soon stopped using Santa for political cartoons and began creating many funny drawings for children, showing cheerful scenes from Santa Claus's life. It was in Nast's illustrations that the story of modern Santa became popular. It gained details. Nast shows Santa watching children and writing their good and bad actions in a book, waiting until children fell asleep, and ringing in a Christmas bell. It was also in these illustrations that the idea first appeared, that Santa lives at the North Pole. Thomas Nast added important elements to Santa's image. These included a red fur-trimmed coat, a large sack of gifts, a white beard, and a kind, friendly face. These ideas about Santa became accepted as a standard and spread widely in popular culture. People often say that Thomas Nast based Santa on himself. The artist was a short, heavy man with a large mustaches and a white beard. At the beginning of the 20th century, a new stage began in the history of Santa Claus's image. Marketing fully took over America, and Santa began to be used in advertising. In 1915, Santa appeared in drink advertising for the first time, and it wasn't Coca-Cola. The company White Rock Beverages released a black and white advertisement for mineral water featuring Santa Claus. In 1931, Coca-Cola had already decided to make Santa the main character of its winter advertising campaign. The company's goal was to show that the drink was good not only in summer, but also in winter. At that time, many people thought of Coca-Cola only as a summer drink, so its winter sales were very low. The company believed that a character connected with a winter holiday would help increase sales during the cold season. For the first advertising campaign, a new image of Santa Claus was created by American artist Haddon Sandblom. Sandblom based his Santa on the image from the poem The Night Before Christmas and on the illustrations by Thomas Nast. In the advertisement, Santa held a glass of Coca-Cola and invited everyone to take a refreshing break. In 1936, Coca-Cola released a new advertising campaign. In these images, Santa Claus was shown without his coat, with rolled up sleeves, but wearing his famous Santa's hat. On the poster, Santa said the words, "Me too," showing that he drinks Coca-Cola just like everyone else. The original oil paintings created by Sandblom were adapted for Coca-Cola advertisements in magazines, on billboards, and even on toys. The advertisements featuring Santa were extremely successful, and their wide use made this image of Santa Claus famous all over the world. People liked this image very much, and it quickly spread across different countries. As a result, many people began to think that this image of Santa was created by Coca-Cola itself, even though the company was actually using an image that had already been formed many years earlier. Since then, Santa Claus has been regularly used in Coca-Cola advertising and remains an important part of the brand. And here, Santa's image and story were finally fully formed. Santa Claus is a Saint Nicholas, shaped by pagan myths, European folklore, and American culture. Subscribe to our channel if you want to see more educational stories. And Merry Christmas!